From sovereignty to commerce, how U.S. law became a commercial contract. In 1938, a seismic shift occurred in the American legal landscape, one that set the stage for the notion that all law is commercial. With the Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Erie Railroad Co. v. Tompkins, the concept of federal common law was effectively dismantled in favor of a legal system that prioritized state law in non-federal civil matters. Although Erie restored certain elements of state sovereignty, it also paved the way for a highly commercialized framework where federal jurisdiction became dominant in areas of finance, commerce, and contractual obligations. Over time, this ruling would serve as the foundation for a legal paradigm that, by design, treats most interactions as if they are governed by commercial or contract law principles. Since the 1938 decision, the U.S. legal system has expanded federal jurisdiction over commercial matters while adopting legal frameworks that view individuals, states, and corporations as participants in a nationwide commercial system. In this article, we explore how the commercial lens has come to shape all aspects of U.S. law and examine the legal, social, and economic factors that contributed to this shift. The Erie Doctrine and the End of Federal Common Law. The Erie Railroad Co. v. Tompkins' decision was pivotal in ending the concept of a general federal common law, a practice that had allowed federal courts to create their own rules for civil cases when no federal statute applied. In Erie, the court ruled that federal courts must apply state law in cases where federal statutes do not govern, effectively recognizing state law as the primary authority in civil matters. While Erie reinforced state jurisdiction over civil disputes, it did so primarily in matters unrelated to commerce and finance. The decision did not apply to commercial law, which remained within the purview of federal jurisdiction, particularly in areas related to interstate commerce. This ruling created a dual framework where general civil matters would defer to state law, but anything involving commerce, contracts, or federal obligations would remain under federal authority. This division underscored the transition to a system where all law governing commerce and finance was subject to a uniform federal standard, laying the groundwork for the idea that commercial law principles dominate U.S. jurisprudence. 2. The rise of the Uniform Commercial Code, UCC. Following the Erie decision, the development and adoption of the Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, in the 1950s further solidified the shift toward a commercialized legal framework. The UCC, a comprehensive set of laws governing commercial transactions, provided standardized rules for negotiable instruments, sales, banking, and secured transactions across all states. By harmonizing commercial laws nationwide, the UCC allowed interstate commerce to flourish under a unified set of principles, effectively establishing a federal commercial jurisdiction across state lines. The UCC's adoption by all 50 states represented a major shift toward commercial uniformity. With states agreeing to follow the same rules in commercial matters, the UCC placed commercial law principles at the center of the American legal system. In doing so, it framed interactions between individuals, corporations, and states as commercial activities governed by uniform standards, regardless of local variations in state law. This transition reinforced the idea that commercial transactions, and by extension, many other interactions within the U.S., were fundamentally contractual in nature, governed by a standardized, quasi-federal system of obligations and rights. 3. The debt-based economy and Federal Reserve Notes, FRNs. The shift toward a commercial legal framework was also driven by changes in the U.S. monetary system, particularly the reliance on debt-based currency. In 1933, the U.S. abandoned the gold standard, and Federal Reserve Notes, FRNs, became the nation's primary form of currency. Unlike gold-backed currency, FRNs are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, functioning as debt instruments that represent an obligation rather than an asset. The use of FRNs in every economic transaction places all participants, individuals, states, and corporations, within a federal financial framework. By conducting business using FRNs, participants effectively engage in a federal system where currency is tied to debt and federal obligations. This reliance on FRNs positions every transaction within a federal commercial jurisdiction, binding participants to federal regulations governing currency, debt, and financial transactions. The debt-based nature of the economy thus reinforces the concept that economic interactions are, by default, subject to federal commercial law principles. I-4. The federal franchise and implied contracts. The reliance on a commercial framework for legal and economic interactions has led to the concept of a federal franchise, where individuals and states operate within a system governed by federal oversight. By using FRNs and engaging in interstate commerce, individuals implicitly agree to federal jurisdiction over these transactions, effectively consenting to a contractual relationship with the federal government. This concept of implied consent frames economic activities as commercial transactions within a federalized system, where the federal government exercises oversight as if it were a franchisor, and states, corporations, and individuals are franchisees. This federal franchise model treats participants as legal persons with obligations derived from contract law principles, positioning commercial law as a dominant force in defining rights and duties within the federal system. The use of implied contracts to govern economic interactions aligns with the idea that all law is commercial, as individuals and states alike assume commercial obligations when they engage in financial activities. This framework creates a quasi-corporate relationship where rights and responsibilities are determined not solely by public law, but also by the contractual terms of economic participation within the federal system. V. Implications for sovereignty and individual rights. The transition to a commercialized legal system has profound implications for state sovereignty and individual rights. As federal commercial law takes precedence in matters involving FRNs and interstate commerce, state authority becomes limited, particularly in financial and economic matters. Similarly, individuals who engage in the economy through the use of FRNs and participation in contractual agreements assume obligations within a federalized system that may override certain personal or state-based rights. For example, the requirement to pay federal income taxes can be seen as a condition of participation in the federal commercial system, where individuals, by earning and spending FRNs, acknowledge the federal government's regulatory authority over their financial transactions. The idea that all law is commercial thus implies that individual rights and state sovereignty may be subordinated to the demands of a debt-based commercial framework, where contractual obligations define the nature of legal responsibilities within the federal jurisdiction. V6. The future of a commercialized legal system. With the rise of digital currencies, blockchain technology, and decentralized finance, DeFi, the commercialized legal framework established since 1938 may face new challenges. Digital currencies and decentralized platforms offer alternatives to traditional FRNs and bank-based transactions, potentially allowing individuals and states to operate outside the federal franchise model. These developments introduce the possibility of a legal system that incorporates both commercial and decentralized principles, redefining how individuals and states interact within a federalized system. As these new technologies gain traction, the federal government may seek to incorporate them into the commercial jurisdiction, either through regulation or by establishing a federal digital currency. Alternatively, the legal system may need to adapt to a hybrid model where individuals and states can participate in both centralized and decentralized systems, reshaping the notion that all law is commercial and reintroducing elements of common law or constitutional protections in areas currently governed by commercial law principles. Conclusion: understanding the commercialization of law. The concept that all law is commercial captures the essence of the U.S. legal system since 1938, where economic interactions are governed by a framework that prioritizes federal oversight and commercial principles. Through the adoption of the UCC, the use of debt-based currency, and the implied contract model of the federal franchise, American law has evolved to treat most legal interactions as commercial transactions, binding individuals and states to a system that often places economic obligations above other considerations. This shift has brought about uniformity and stability in commercial transactions, facilitating the growth of the national economy. However, it has also raised questions about the limits of federal jurisdiction, the balance of state and individual rights, and the potential for a future legal framework that can integrate commercial principles with emerging decentralized technologies. As we move forward, understanding how all law is commercial shapes the American legal landscape will be essential for navigating the intersection of sovereignty, individual rights, and commercial obligations in a rapidly evolving world.
Yeah, oh, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, Jah are the only sovereign, him give me the key. Me now bow to Babylon, just set me free. Under Jah law, me rights them pure. Inna the courtroom, me heart secure. Yeah, Jah are the only sovereign, him give me the key. Me stand firm, Jah guide me destiny. Him sovereign, I him me serve. Me live for Jah, I him me preserve. Babylon want you fit forget who you be, but Jah bless me now me eyes them see. Them me love system full of them lie, but Jah law govern and me can't deny. My rights come from above, them can't take. Jah give me the key, me no live in a debt. Me I walk on the path, but Jah show me way. Under the most high, me can't go stray. Yeah, Jah are the only sovereign, him give me the key. Me now bow to Babylon, Jah set me free. Under Jah law, me rights them pure. Inna the courtroom, me heart secure. Yeah, Jah are the only sovereign, him give me the key. Me stand firm, Jah guide me destiny. Him sovereign, I him me serve. Me live for Jah.